All right, welcome to Bold Strong. This is Craig Nadeau, and I'm here today with Jeff Davison, Ward 6 Councillor and Mayoral candidate. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Fantastic.
Excellent. You're running for mayor now, and how long have you been into the campaign, and what's it been like?
Well, I mean, this is only the second time I've ever been involved in an election. I got elected in 2017, born and raised in the ward I now represent, and back in May decided that the timing was right and that Calgary needs some leadership and jumped into the mayor's race.
Exciting, and it's a big change for Calgary. There's a biggest campaign for mayor, most likely.
Well, I think all across the board, there's over 20 people now in the race to run for mayor, which, really isn't that uncommon when you have an incumbent stepping out.
Right.
The bigger change is that we've got 10 members of council that are leaving at this point, maybe even 11. We don't know. And so when we think about, there's a huge opportunity in front of us to look at change, but change can also be something that can be a little indetermined when we think about it. Sometimes change is scary.
Yeah, and as we talked about off air, obviously change is scary, and people usually rush into it until they realize that something's about to change, and then they're not comfortable anymore. And
yeah, I think this election is really going to be about proven leadership and track record, and being the person who does what they say they're going to do, and has a history of getting things done for the city. There's 3 members of council that are running for the mayor's seat. I think, one of us has that track record of collaboration and getting things done. And then you've got a lot of people from the outside. The challenge we're going to have is that there's a lot of opportunity in front of Calgary right now, but we've got to get moving on it. And I feel like right now we have well set the table over the last 4 years for Calgary's recovery. We've got to get moving quickly. Before we jump into what is that opportunity, because it is really fascinating, I think one of the big questions that a lot of people, on the outside of politics ever wonder is like, why would you ever do that to yourself? And people have told me over the years, it's like, Craig, you should run for something, fill in the blank. It's like, I never want that level of scrutiny. I don't want to be watched. I just not interested. Why are you doing it? What's in it for you? Well, you're absolutely right. It is tough being in the public spotlight. That's for sure. I've got 3 small kids, and it can be hard at times, just making sure that they're protected from a lot of the challenges that are out there. But at the same time, I'm interested in this job because I have 3 small kids. I really do worry about the future of Calgary and the opportunities for young people and where we're going to go from here. And that's one of the reasons I jumped into the race is predominantly because of that. Secondary to that is really that I feel like we have set the table for Calgary's biggest recovery in our history over the last 4 years. But it's going to take the right type of leadership moving forward in order to make sure we move from strategy to execution.
Right. I think it'll be interesting with all the changes at the city council level too, with the, and if you're mayor, it's going to be an awfully big job just to kind of, herd the cats, right? Yeah. And to get everyone who's brand new. Like most of these people are, for the most part, are brand new to politics.
Yeah.
Right. So
absolutely. I mean, it's a challenge for sure, but I think it really boils down to, it's kind of like how council works now. You really have to think about what are the priorities of your colleagues, and where do you find commonality together, and ultimately figure out what's the goal we're trying to drive towards. And when it comes to getting people involved in projects and different things, it's really about getting their buy-in, because when you become a leader, it's not just about you leading and you winning. It's really about we. And the old cliche is there's no I in team, right?
Yep.
It is about we. And so when you take a lot of these large projects that I've been able to accomplish in 4 years, it's because it's not about me, it's about Calgarians. But to get there, I really need to get my colleagues vested into the project to say yes, because it takes 8 votes on council to get anything done.
Right. It does seem at times, and maybe this is an over-characterization of what goes on in Calgary, is there's a lot of stuff we need to do.
Yeah.
And it seems like we get to the point where it's just about to happen, and then we get scared and everyone pulls back and things don't happen.
Yeah.
And we look at, I was speaking with someone recently and we were contrasting where's Edmonton versus Calgary right now, and I was I wasn't born in Edmonton, but I was raised in Edmonton mostly, and I go up and see their event center or their ice district, and it's like, this downtown used to be a dump.
Yeah.
And now it's completely transformed. And the ring road's done. And it's like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff we need to get on.
Well, it requires commitment,
right?
Yeah.
And when you think about everything from investment to doing these projects, it's all about security and certainty and making sure that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And I believe it's about vision. It's about where do we want to be as a city and how are we going to get there? You know, assets are just assets, infrastructure is just infrastructure. But how does all those pieces ladder up to what we're trying to achieve as a city? And that's ultimately the goal of the mayor, to outline, here's the vision and here's where we're going to get to. It's hard though when leadership comes into criticism, projects become contentious. You have a number of people actively trying to misrepresent files, so because it's not something they want to do. It's hard to keep those narratives on track when you're trying to remain committed to the ultimate goal, and you know that there's a number of steps that you need to take to get there.
Right. And what happens too, and we probably see this in Calgary, is if you asked 100 people and said, what is the ultimate vision of Calgary, you'd have probably zero answers, honestly.
Yeah.
But you'd at least have 100 different answers. Like, no one will be able to say, oh yeah, this is what we're fully committed to being in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, no one knows what that is.
Yeah. Well, and that's the challenge of being mayor, right?
Yeah.
You have to be everybody's mayor. You can't just sort of subset to a certain demographic of people. You have to think about, if you're the mayor, you have to think about everything from the economy to homelessness.
Yeah.
And everything in between, and what's the ultimate goal? For me, it's continuing to make our city better, continuing to make life better for our citizens. And how do we do that? Well, we've got to think about how do we build a stronger economy and put people back to work. And so thinking about things like place. Placemaking is really one of those reasons why young people want to stay in Calgary, and you want them to want to stay in Calgary, not need to stay in Calgary. You have to think about business environment and what is the local business environment, and in particular for small business. When you think about small business in our city, it's the number one employer in our city. And so getting the regulatory environment for them is absolutely critical to the success of all Calgarians. You have to think about it too, go back to what I said about security and certainty. When we're looking to attract investment here, those are the two biggest factors that people feel are lacking from Calgary today. And so we have to be able to think about, everything through that lens of security and certainty. And then you've got opportunity around place or innovation and talent. And that's where we really have to think about how are we going to transform our downtown? How are we going to transform our economy and do things differently here? And ultimately, it's about technology and how technology plays into a number of sectors and where those job creation pieces are going to be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in Calgary, and I was talking to, I don't know if you saw, we had a conversation with Daniel Smith some time ago, and we were talking about the innovative capacity of Alberta, really, not just Calgary. And when you think back to, and I've said this, it'll start to sound a little repetitive, but I remember back when I was a kid and they discovered the oil sands, and they were like, wow, this is going to be so complicated. We have oil mixed with sand. How are we ever going to separate those two things? And then that just spawned an entire industry that it was attached to oil and gas, but it wasn't oil and gas. It was engineering, it was process engineering, and that technology was able to span the globe, really, anywhere where there was oil. So,
well, and that's the big thing. I think you've actually hit it right on the head. I think Calgary and Edmonton in particular, we have to start thinking of ourselves as an innovation corridor, right? Silicon Valley is not just one piece of the valley. It's a huge valley where a lot of different companies are, but it's become kind of that mecca of technology. We have an opportunity to do that here, right? Where we can think about how do we ladder technology into solving some of the world's biggest problems, everything from energy to food and sustainability. Those are major things that are coming forward that, we've got a highly educated workforce here. We've got, incredibly talented people, and we've got a young workforce. These are things that we can now apply them into those sectors to start doing things differently here at home.
And I think you make a pretty good point about, we don't want to lose those people. They're well educated. They're here today.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's more attractive to be somewhere else, and it's possible to go there, then suddenly we start to lose that, which is really sad.
Well, it's a big challenge right now. I mean, we're seeing a lot of young people leave our city, right? They're going to universities here or they're leaving. I had a guy say to me the other day, he said, Jeff, 30 years ago, I went to the University of Saskatchewan, and everybody in Saskatchewan was saying, let's get out of here. We got to go to Calgary. Yep. Calgary's where things are happening. It's a place to be. The challenge we had then was that, everybody came here and now their kids are saying what they used to say about Saskatchewan, about Alberta. And he said to me, my second-year university student came home the other day and he said, I'm going to go to Toronto. Things are happening in Toronto. And so we have to think about how do we build Calgary forward. It's not just about low taxes and all those things that we tend to focus on around elections. It's really about that placemaking component, making sure people want to be in Calgary, not need to be in Calgary.
Yeah, it needs to be you're right, an exciting place with the right amenities, the right mix of transportation and access, and there's a whole bunch of things that we can do in Calgary. So, and you mentioned the event center, which is a big one, and I think it's transformational in some ways because it lays a map for an area of Calgary, which is underutilized in some ways. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think, transformational exactly is the point here, right? We're not just doing a hockey deal here. This is really about transforming, the world's most least impressive parking lots into a district that we've always desired, frankly. Yeah. When we think about our overall downtown challenge, one of the biggest pieces we miss on here in Calgary is livability, right? We've got a very corporate downtown. We're probably one of the only jurisdictions in North America that doesn't have a significant post-secondary presence in the downtown core. And what that all means is that people aren't living here, right? Yeah. We've got to create ways to get more people living downtown, because if we can get people living downtown, we can activate our downtown through programming. And this is the event center is a bit of the programming piece, right? To think about if we could build an anchor facility and couple that with what we're doing with the BMO expansion, the Arts Commons, we've got the National Music Center, even laddering that all the way through to Chinatown. If we can figure out ways to get more people living downtown and activating these areas, that's going to be, successful for our recovery.
I'm curious if you have any insight on like the YMCA packed it in the Eau Claire YMCA, and I kind of thought that I know a lot of people that used to go there every single day, and I feel like if you're going to pack a whole pile of people into downtown Calgary, there's got to be something to do, because like you said, it's very corporate. You can hit Starbucks and all kinds of coffee shops, but there isn't a lot to do. And, we need to expand what can be done in the area.
Well, and in particular in a post-COVID world, when we're trying to attract more people to come back into the downtown core just for business purposes, you're right. You have to think about programming and what are those things that we can be doing. I mean, the closure of the Eau Claire Y it's a sad day. I mean, it's not a civic facility, so there's nothing the city can really do there. But it does highlight to me, without the ability to get more people living and playing downtown, in particular when we're trying to encourage them to come back and work downtown, if you don't have those other factors there, we're going to see a lot more of these closures because more people are staying working in the suburbs.
Yeah, more of an exodus out of downtown.
Well, and you think about even the local buildings that we are putting together, right? Park Place is a great example of, a new sort of leasing community building, right? And, you got a rooftop pool, you've got a bar area, you've built in a sense of community, you've got heated underground parking, you've got a place for your dog, a state-of-the-art gym. You put all those amenities into livable pieces downtown, well, all of a sudden those secondary facilities like the Y are less and less needed because people have it localized in their own building. And so thinking through all of the assets we have and the opportunity we have to recover our downtown and how all those pieces can work together is going to be incredibly important for our recovery.
Yeah, it's interesting too. One of the things that Edmonton has is, and I always get stuck on this because I can never remember the name of the facility, but they have a basketball facility there that got built years ago, and my son was in basketball, and all of Western Canada goes to that facility. What the heck's it called? It'll hit me later. But, it's a massive court. Yeah. Calgary needs that sort of stuff too, so that we can draw people into Calgary rather than, we can still go to Edmonton. Yeah. Be better if we were going to Calgary.
And there's a lot of things we lose to Edmonton, right? I mean, part of the reason to say yes to the event center is stop losing major concerts that are going there. We lose them to Vancouver, we lose them to Edmonton. I mean, we lose a lot of opportunity to Saskatoon, and nobody thinks about that. And when you start thinking about where is all this opportunity going, where is the infrastructure to support this type of programming, it's all bypassing Calgary, and so we've got to think differently about how we do that.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff we could do, and I think you pointed this out actually is the event center isn't, and this isn't supposed to be all about the event center, but the event center, I think in the minds of many people is this one building, and it's not a building. If people think that, they need to drive to Edmonton and see what happened to Edmonton. Yeah, and it's multiple blocks of massive economic development. Yeah.
And we need that.
And
that's
exactly.
important.
That's what this is about. I mean, there's a lot of folks will say, well, Houston built a new facility and it didn't recover their downtown. And it's like, yep, single point data is rarely, productive, right? I mean, one of the reasons we're not building this facility in the middle of a parking lot is because we want to activate it. And you want to activate it, 365 days a year, which I know isn't realistic, but you got to move from 44 hockey games and a couple of concerts a year to programming 250, 290 days out of the year. That's what this facility will do. We've now anchored it as a key point within the community. And so you look at places like, Kansas City, Columbus, Nashville, even Edmonton. You look at where they have been successful in standing these districts up. And then you're right, it becomes about economic development rather than about a single-use facility.
Yeah. And, it's, there's some risk in comparing us to Vegas and, but they're straight south and they've done an amazing job of attracting people. And then they put up an arena, and then they put up a football stadium, and there's just even more reasons to go there. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever been to any of the conferences that get run in their massive conference.
When we used to have conferences?
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, those facilities are packed, and they're booked years in advance, and packed.
Yeah.
And they just load up hotels and restaurants and everything else. Massive economic opportunity.
Well, and that's where, again, in this district, we've got not just the event center, it's coupled with the BMO expansion. So we're moving to be a tier 1 convention city. So we can compete by bringing in, 20 to 30,000 people at a time for some of these major conferences. That's where we can move the needle economically.
Yeah. What do you know, and this is sort of an aside topic, but 17th Avenue crosses McLeod, and there's a big project that's there, isn't it? I think very few people know about this project.
Yeah, it's all part of, the event district that we're trying to stand up. And so, providing access into Stampede grounds off of 17th Avenue is an incredible piece that we've opened up again. So there's a huge upgrade to move Stampede Station, the LRT station there, and then provide access straight into the park, because it's all about connecting the neighborhood and ensuring that, there's viability across the district in transportation.
And 17th Avenue is super busy, now, and it's become a great place for Calgary. I think the ability to go right from 17 right into Stampede is going to be another huge transformation. I don't think people really get how big of a deal that's going to be.
Well, and remember, the Stampede has desired for a long time their own sort of Stampede Street type of thing, right? And so this is really providing access, from the backside, whereas, it was always parking lot before.
Right.
And it can remain parking lot, but there's ways that we can start activating it and providing access egress differently into these sites.
Right. I don't want to dive into the C train thing, but that's also takes some serious long-term planning, because that really defines where Calgary goes 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Is you put a line somewhere, that's a big deal, and you can't just wait either. Like, you can't just we'll just wait for 30 years and see where the city goes, and then we'll accommodate. You have to build when it's cheap too. Like, it'll be way more expensive later.
Well, nothing. If you wait, nothing ever gets cheaper.
No.
Right? I mean, it's just the way things work. Our challenge right now on a lot of our capital infrastructure projects is going to be inflation, and what does $4 trillion worth of stimulus spending in the United States do to inflation pressures here in Canada? But we've got to remain steadfast to these programs, because when I look at things like Green Line, right? Green Line, yes, it is one piece of track. Yes, it's a piece of the LRT, but more importantly, it's an integral piece of an artery system that we have with our LRT to run sort of our BRT, so our bus rapid transits, cross-sectionally with those LRTs. What that means in general is providing good transit infrastructure and a network that works for all Calgarians.
Right.
I look at it as when we think about downtown recovery, economic recovery, the Green Line can help with both of those things. But the piece people forget is often where do we plan on being 10 to 15 years from now? And if we think about our economic strategy, if we think about our downtown recovery plan, say we're successful in all of these things, right? Calgary could be a city of 2 million people in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah,
we will go through massive growth if we're successful with this technology play that we're trying to move on. That means we're going to have to move people around our city differently. And we have to start pre-planning that now, because these projects take a long time. They take a lot of capital. But it's a good example of, once you've said you're going to do something, you have to remain committed to getting there. Right.
Yeah. And what's really remarkable about what you're saying there is in some ways, you know, maybe I'm going to challenge you and say, look, we need to have a mission statement for Calgary, and say, we probably do, I'm sure. And it's in some binder. It's on page 12. You know, but we need a mission statement that Calgarians can get behind. And part of that mission statement might be, we're going to be at 2 million people here. And we want to be at 2 million people, because that means all of this. It means, you know, infrastructure and fun and better city, and economically we're going to be better. But that we're going to be there, and we need to plan for that, because people miss out on that. And like, they don't, why would we spend $10 on a new transit line that we don't need today? Or why do we need a new event center that we don't need? Well, we do need it today, but there's a whole list of those things where we don't need that today. We certainly need it if we double, our population starts to get into the double zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't look at it as spending. Like, a lot of people will say, well, the spending's out of control. Why are we spending this money, right? I look at it in terms of, where are we investing? And every investment provides a rate of return, right? Anytime you invest, you want a return, whether that's socially, economically, whatever, you know, at the city, it doesn't matter. There has to be a return. And ultimately, for me to spend money, we have to be outcomes driven. And I feel like everything we have set the table spending money on has been an investment over the last 4 years. And it's an investment in Calgary's future. And ultimately, that all kind of points back to, where are we going? And, you know, I think, you know, when it comes to things like mission statements change all the time, right? Especially, you know, they tend to be the flavor of the political spectrum of the day type of thing, right? For me, this election is just about Calgarians. It's not about the left or the right. It's not about the candidates. It's about Calgarians. And for me, the mission statement right now is that Calgary doesn't recover if every Calgarian doesn't recover. And that's a hard place to be. Right?
I've noticed, you know, on that note, downtown's changed. Do you spend a lot of time downtown? Like, are you on in this zone where we're at today? It's changed.
It's changed a lot.
There's the number of people wandering, if you know what I'm saying, is really changed, like dramatically over the last 2 years.
Well, and, you know, our challenge in the downtown is that, you know, when we started pumping a lot of infrastructure dollars into East Village, right, you look what's happened over there. It's been transformational, right? And we're trying to do that now in the Rivers District, and get that livability, that work, and that play piece all thriving together. Everything now west of 5th has become sort of the old East downtown, and we're watching it start to decay. And that's where the downtown strategy plan really comes into play, is to think about, you know, we can't just take and recover and build in half of our downtown. We have to think of it as collectively the greater downtown area. And so, you know, looking at how we reinvest in opportunities west of 5th is incredibly important, because you don't want to see the west half of downtown decay.
Right.
You want to fix that problem now, so that we do have an opportunity to get our entire downtown area thriving.
What's planned for the Greyhound station zone? Like, and how much of that is city property? Like, does that include the dealerships that's there? And
a lot of it's private land. A lot of it requires significant cleanup, and so, you know, that's some of the challenge over there, is that there's a lot of creosote in the ground over there from the old, I believe it was the old Imperial plant back in the 30s and 40s or something. Don't quote me on that. I don't really know.
But it was something, and there was creosote there, and
lots of contamination in the soil there. And so, you know, that's where we've got to start thinking about, are there federal funding pieces that we can put in place to incentivize developers to come in, clean up that area, and continue to grow our downtown base.
Or I guess what we're doing with that space now is just leaving it. We're not doing anything to it.
Well, I mean, part of what I did back in December was that, you know, I got tired of everybody saying, well, nobody's doing anything in our downtown. Why is this happening? And so the kickoff to the downtown strategy was really because I put forward a notice of motion to say, if you want to start, you know, getting more people downtown, you have to encourage people to live downtown. Right. And if you're going to encourage people to live downtown, well, we're going to have to start thinking about incentives to get people building downtown. And so that was really, you know, to your point, one of the reasons that I brought this together is because what do we do with these old abandoned spaces, right? I mean, the old CBE building is a good example as well. Right. You've got a building that has been, you know, sitting there dilapidated for 6 years. It's probably not going to get built for the next 10. So can we look at opportunities where we can incentivize these landowners to tear those buildings down, create a public realm space that helps us clean up that sort of vacancy look and bring us back to a state of vibrancy, you know, and does that help our recovery? And so I think it does. I mean, I think if you're going to ask people, in particular people who are from outside of Calgary, to invest in our downtown, we've got to be able to show them that it's worthwhile investing in.
Yeah, and you know, that really takes us to a fascinating point about why would someone come to Calgary? You know, and maybe you come here because rent is dirt cheap, or maybe you come here because innovation is attractive, or that there's great talent. But we need to have a multitude of those reasons. And I think you have a fondness for the film industry and for production stuff. And that industry it's kind of secretly happening. And I think it needs to get pumped a little bit more. It's there's some big stuff going on there.
Well, I think, you go back to why do people come to Calgary, right? I think opportunity as itself is synonymous with Calgary, right? People have always come to Calgary because they see Calgary as a place of open doors and open opportunity. And I think that's really where we've been able to help capitalize on the film sector now, is to say, look, at some point years ago, we were called Hollywood North. We had 7 major productions come that year, and we were off to the races. But then we kind of, throttled off the industry by removing things like the incentive program. We weren't talking about ourselves. It became an unstable place to invest. We were seeing our crews, because of lack of production happening here, leave and go to places like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and even Winnipeg, who stood up a film center, a number of years ago that's been very successful for them. We then built a film studio and, thought that might be the mecca that attracted everybody, but it doesn't, right? I mean, when you go back, and I've produced film and television for 15 years, and, when you go back and you think about how do we choose jurisdictions to shoot, it's not the directors, it's not the chief cinematographers saying, I want to go here, this is the look we want. It's the accountants and the lawyers saying where we're going to spend the money, right? And so you have to kind of look at it through that lens and think, okay, well, how do we get those people paying attention to Calgary again? So, about 25 months ago, we worked to take back the film studio here in Calgary from the province. They wanted to hand the keys back. It was about 11% occupied, and effectively,
is that right? Really?
It was a failing warehouse, right?
Yeah.
And I convinced council, let's take a risk on this, because I think we can move this from an old building that's just not being utilized to let's stand this industry back up. And so, it took a lot of hard push to get there. So we reconstituted a board at the Film Center to say, look, we've got to pay attention to this building, and what do we need to do with the building to get people wanting to use it. We spent 2 years working with the film commissioner in order to say, here's what we require for incentives just to get Hollywood to pay attention to Alberta. I mean, nobody pays attention if you don't have the right incentive. And the problem wasn't that we didn't have incentives, it was that they kept changing, and then they got capped. And so
unstable. It was tough to
go back to what we said before: security and certainty. Right, that's what investors want, and that's what they didn't have before. So we got that fixed with the provincial government, which we're thankful for, because that really is what unlocked people looking at Alberta as a shooting jurisdiction. And remember, when we talk about Calgary as sort of like a film center, about 98% of all production that happens in the province happens in and around Calgary. So just to qualify that, because it is a provincial incentive, but we obviously take it full advantage here in Calgary.
Anytime we get into the film conversation, I remember back to when I was a kid, and people don't remember, like, Superman was shot here.
Yeah, 1983, I think.
Because we had this tight downtown core that was just so cool for that one shot.
Well, and we've had a lot of that over the years, and so it was all about how do we attract people to pay attention to Calgary again. And so, with restanding up the film center, we moved it from 11 to 100% occupied pre-COVID. Through COVID, people were paying attention to Alberta and Calgary in particular, because again, we had the right procedures and protocols in place to manage production, because production is an essential service. So we worked with the province to ensure that everybody coming in was safe. In fact, we shot Yellowstone season 4 here in the film center while COVID was happening. Wow. So, in and amongst a whole bunch of other stuff. But the point being is that through all of these things that we've done, this will be, the next 2 years here in Calgary will be the biggest ever for film production in Calgary.
Right?
And I think we last I checked, I think we have north of 20 major productions coming in the next 18 months. So now you've got, an opportunity where we've got to go and hire 600, 700, 800 people to come in. And we're not talking about, just, your producers. You're talking about, trades folks mainly. And so bringing those crews back from Toronto and Vancouver is going to be key to ensuring that we can maintain this level of production. That's all starting to happen.
Wouldn't it be great? Like, I think a lot of people think film and they just really want to see Bruce Willis downtown or something, and so they're looking for a camera and they're looking for Bruce Willis, but they don't realize the vast number of people that are in behind these things. Well, it'd be
crazy.
Great.
It's crazy. They shot my friend shot an Edo Japan commercial at our house, and it was crazy how many people were on set for a commercial, right? I mean, you forget that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people behind the scenes on every movie, on every production that's happening.
People aren't aware how many people are in the background here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, trying to make this look good for this show is like,
it's not easy.
Yeah, there's hundreds of folks here.
Makeup, hair.
Yeah, there's trailers. Yeah, somebody's running around with union contracts.
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it would be really exciting if we could drag some of the like everyone thinks about the filming component, but if we could drag some of that production and post-production component into Calgary too,
and that's what's starting to happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about what are Calgary's advantages in film? It's okay. Well, we've got a film center, we've got the mountains, we've got beautiful scenery, we've got talented crews, we've got good sort of secondary actors.
Yeah, it's a good set.
It's the makeup of a perfect scenario.
Right.
Right now, you want to make sure that you get more people spending time here after set wraps, right? And so, but technology's changed that a lot, right? A lot of folks are able to now go into shooting jurisdictions and then take the production back to where they're from, right?
Because in reality, it's a very interesting comment, because that's an experience that the engineering world has experienced as well. Because now you can just take a design and ship it somewhere, and tomorrow morning it shows up on blueprints. Yeah. You had nothing to do with Calgary.
Well, it's amazing, right? Even just the ability to do real time everything on a film set now has just changed the game, And so, actually, a friend of mine at HBO now, he helped start a system that was all about, the ability to shoot anywhere in the world, and everybody can check in and see shots as they're coming in live. It was all about real time dailies. It was all about just continuity and everything happening in real time versus you used to sort of go and shoot a scene, and then 3-4 days later somebody would say, oh, there was a mistake, we got to go back and shoot the scene. And that almost never happens anymore because of technology.
I don't know if you know a friend of mine, Doug Vermeeren. He shot a movie here, and he shot it at Heritage Park.
Oh yeah.
And Heritage Park, I guess, just bent over backwards for them and just made it a perfect set. And it was a great experience. And like, you never really hear of Heritage Park being a great set, but it really is.
It's there's a lot of gems like that, and I think the one thing that really sets us apart as a place where people want to come into this jurisdiction and create film and television is that it's that Calgary hospitality, right? It's Calgarians. It's the fact that these things are really cool. We want to see more of it here, and everybody's kind of willing to roll up their sleeves here in Calgary and get things done.
Yeah, I don't know how you need to get some momentum behind it somehow. Like in I don't know if you've spent much time in Vancouver at all. Like at certain times, it's like the city just wraps up and then becomes a movie set. And it's like there's trailers and trucks and lighting, and the whole downtown becomes in some cases, a car chase scene. Yeah. And everyone's just so excited that that's happening.
Well, and that's what you're going to see here in Calgary, right? Yeah. I mean, with Last of Us, they've just started shooting here in town, and, that is the largest series production ever in Canada, right?
No way.
So when you think about it, you're going to see a lot of that. And now you think about the 20 projects that a project of that size and scope has now helped us attract into the city. This is going to be the way we hope for many years to come.
Yeah. I find it fascinating because I think a lot of, we'll call it lay people, which essentially would include me, we would say, oh yeah, we got to diversify our economy. And it's like, oh, we totally forgot about that switch, and it's not a switch. Yeah. And diversification of the economy has been going on forever.
For a long time.
Like, it didn't just start.
Yeah.
And so, but we do need to build on the momentum and just get this thing bigger and bigger. And it's not going to go from 10% film to 50 or 100%. It's going to go 10, 11, 12. It's just going to grow throughout time.
Yeah, well, you think about right now, I think, oil and gas in our city is about 24% of sort of the major pieces that we have, but there's a lot going on in agri-tech, there's a lot going on in logistics, there's a lot going on in pharmaceuticals and, aviation. All these things are here in Calgary. Film, creative services, right? All of those things have been happening. It's our job now to amplify all of those things so that we get them into growth sector mode.
Yeah, and that's and I guess some of that is on the province. The province has to bring they have a economic responsibility as well, and then the city has a big opportunity as well to grow it. So that's an interesting balance between yourself, as mayor, and then the province to work together to build some of that as well.
Well, and that's one of the big things I think that is going to be key to this election is, understanding who can collaborate with the other orders of government, who can collaborate with the private sector, who can collaborate with the post-secondary institutions, because all of those things are going to be important. You look at jurisdictions like Pittsburgh, like Kitchener-Waterloo, like Austin. How have they reinvented themselves? It's because they all work together. right? You've got people at the local level working with the state and provincial levels, working with the federal governments, working with the private sector, working with your post-secondary institutions to ensure that the right talent is coming into the programming that you're creating. All of those things have to work together. And so collaboration going forward, it's not just a cliche word that we want to say during this election. It's really going to be important for people to look at who has a track record of getting things done, who has a track record of working with other partners, because you can't continue to finger wag your way through things and then expect a handout at the end of the day.
You know who's getting things done is Tsuut'ina Nations.
I thought you were going to say me.
And you.
Yeah, thank you. Though. But
them first,
I'll put that shameless plug in right now.
Well, and they had to have approvals, and so someone had to be behind it. So must have been you.
Yeah.
But that's an amazing project down there. Like they've really kicked some butt.
Yeah, you look at what Tsuut'ina has been doing. You look at Balzac. There's lots of opportunity. I think one of our things that we've got to start looking at as a city is being a much more regional play. And so how do we work with some of these partners to ensure that everybody's succeeding versus sort of we're throttling things off at the border, right? Yeah. And again, I go back to the opportunity we have in technology. Thinking about Calgary and Edmonton as a technology corridor is a huge win.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost a no-brainer, right? Between all of the post-secondary institutions, Edmonton is doing a lot right now in AI technology. Calgary's sort of more on that IT service-based technology side. If there's a way to merge that together and really create an innovation corridor, that's a win for everyone.
I probably missed the news at some point, but are we building something, as train between Edmonton and Calgary?
Someone said that. I think haven't they been talking about that since we were 2?
Yeah.
There's always been this idea of a train from Edmonton to Calgary.
And it was going to be a hovercraft. It wasn't a train.
There was hovercrafts. There was spaceships. There was all kinds of craziness when we were kids that we were hearing. It was, I think a lot of that is starting to come up again because I think we are thinking about this idea of, you've got two major centers focused on economic activity and growth. How do you work together to ensure that regionally we can win that? But there's also things like, the train going from the airport to downtown to Banff, right? Those are all pieces of economic development that we can have, right? Like, could you imagine being, living in South Shepherd, getting on the Green Line, going downtown and going for dinner in Banff, and then you can still be home to put your kids to bed. And you've done that entire trip for less than the price of a park pass. Right, like that's the incredible opportunity, right? We've got an opportunity to take the 80% plus now of tourism that comes into YYC and goes directly to Banff via the ring road.
Comes in
and leaves, right?
Straight.
If you can get those people to spend one night in Calgary, one night, that's a $1.2 billion impact to our downtown.
And the reality behind that is that's a concert, some kind of professional sporting event, a casino. Some like music, there's lots of
it's things to
things
do.
Like that. It has to be something
it's
to
that
happen.
Programming piece that we talk about with the event center, again, not just being about one building, but if we can program our downtown differently and provide the assets and the infrastructure to do that, that's meaningful to people. That gives them a reason to want to be downtown, not need to be.
Yeah, and like what happened to the oil and gas show? Just gone. But like that was a big deal. Like it was an every year huge big deal.
Yeah.
Made a big difference to Calgary. It probably isn't, I don't know economically if it's, even comes close to the Stampede or not, but it's a big deal in Calgary.
It's a big deal in Calgary. It's a big deal for the industry, right? And I think, it's funny because we talk a lot about being an oil and gas show. It's really an energy show, right? And I think,
that's right.
When we go back to the opportunity here, I spent 20 years in oil and gas. I understand the industry. I understand where it's going. I understand the level of investment they're making in technology. Right, you've got a lot of major companies now that are facing a couple of challenges. Right, you've got a world where technology has allowed people to triple, quadruple production and reduce their workforce significantly. So we have to think about where are those jobs going, and they're not coming back. And so we have to think about what are we going to do with those folks. But we also have an opportunity, given the amount of technology dollars going into energy, to really think about how does Calgary do Energy 2.0? How do we partner with the federal government to say, look, we understand you want to spend a lot of money on clean and green tech. What the understanding has to be here in Calgary is that, Ottawa's got to understand that most of our oil and gas companies here don't want to be oil and gas companies for the next 5 to 10 years. They want to be energy companies for the next 200 years. And so encouraging them to start investing in green and clean tech, which they're already doing, is another way that we can start bringing those jobs back into market here in Calgary while continuing to be global leaders in innovation and energy.
So in maybe what this turns into is we take the concept of the oil and gas show. Mm-hmm. We have some kind of annual event that is like the innovation show, mm-hmm. and bring the world to Calgary and mm-hmm. say, this is what we can do. Because I think what happened is, Calgary was so busy, Edmonton, Alberta, the whole province was so busy pulling stuff out of the ground that we just lost track of the rest of the world, because we had to be, and it required, thousands of extra people. And a few of the companies I've talked to who they kind of came out of the ether and realized it's like the world's this huge place and we have this ridiculous technology. Why are we keeping it here? Let's take it elsewhere. And we need to bring the world to see that, and then we need to get companies in Calgary to see the rest of the world and make it easy.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. Like, we're seeing a lot of innovation in energy happen right now, and it's getting to a point where it's growing here. The ideas are here, but the investment isn't here. And so we're seeing a lot of these great ideas that are, born and raised here in Calgary, leaving now to go to other jurisdictions and most of them in the States, where these ideas can be fully funded and really take energy to a next sector. Our challenge is that, in the energy sector, you used to be able to do all of your business in a 6-block radius downtown.
Absolutely.
And you can't do that anymore. Yeah. And until we kind of get back to being the focus point of global energy, it's going to be hard to ensure that we are that innovative leader.
Yeah, this will seem like a weird segue, but I understand you have your pilot's license and you've flown
indeed.
You've flown a plane once or twice.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid flying into the Edmonton International Airport, and literally, I don't know if this is on the camera. That was the runway. It was two lines, and this little building, and it's like, hopefully we're not landing there, because it looked like a farmer's field. Mm-hmm. It would be really interesting.
It turns out you were actually in Red Deer.
Yeah, that's right. But, and that was a long time ago. It would be really interesting to see Calgary's airport, going back, to when it was built to today, because it's an amazing airport now, and say, this is why we need to grow Calgary up.
Yeah.
Like, Calgary was this, now it's this, and it has the capacity for way more. Yeah. So that is a weird segue to the airport.
YYC is an incredible opportunity for Calgary. So when you think about logistics and cargo, YYC has enabled us to be an inland port, and it's going to continue to enable us to be an inland port. You've got an available land base where warehouses can be set up. You've got good infrastructure for roadway connectivity. You've got good infrastructure for, now I think we fly to 120 different destinations for cargo. Those are all incredible pieces to have, right? And then you think about the capacity for tourism dollars and getting people in here and having things to do. And again, get them downtown for one night, get them to Banff, have them enjoy the region, not just one piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really an exciting opportunity, and part of it is we do need to have those annual things that just are reoccurring always in Calgary. And then I was talking to someone about there's I think it's the Joe Weider show it's in Vegas or in Pittsburgh. It's one of the big cities every year without fail, and it's like 2 weeks long. Massive event, brings in tons of people, and we need more of those sort of events that are just reoccurring. Yeah. They're just on the calendar. They're going to drag people into Calgary. That would be great.
Well, there's got to be support for those events too, right?
Yep.
I mean, I think, the challenge is that when you get into local politics and you see people, naysaying everything to death or criticizing it, you tend to turn yourself into a jurisdiction that people don't want to spend time or money in because, what's their, I don't want to be criticized. Why do I want to be there, right? And I think that's one of the good opportunities we have with this next council is really to align a vision of where the city's going to be going. Because you're right, we have an incredible opportunity to attract events and talent and all those things, but they're all mobile, right? We live in a very mobile world where, capital, talent, whatever you want to talk, it can go anywhere. You have to give people a reason to want to be in Calgary, not need to be, because they don't need to be any longer. And that doesn't matter if it's our youth, that doesn't matter if it's events, that doesn't matter if it's sectors. Investors even, right? Like, a lot of people are looking at, why do I want to be there, right? We have to give them reason to say, Calgary is the place you want to invest. Calgary is the place you want to live, work, and play. Calgary is the place you want to visit. And until we can kind of get that message aligned, it's going to be hard for us to move that needle.
And I think you're right. Like, one of the toughest parts is if you don't have this bigger vision of why you need to take one step, then it's easy to take zero.
Yeah.
And I think we are
saying no
there.
to everything is easy.
Yeah.
Right. It's super easy to
Safe.
be safe and say no and don't do anything. It's hard to actually have to put the numbers together, have to put the program together, have to get your colleagues to say yes, have to get your citizens to say yes. Those are hard things to do, in particular in a post-COVID world.
Right.
But saying yes is more important than saying no.
Yeah. You know, in this, maybe this takes us to the, we're talking COVID just slightly. And really, I think when you look at Calgary and maybe the whole world, but, we're in Calgary. So, I think people are nervous. Like, people are scared for their future, and I think one of the exciting opportunities for City Council is you can kind of get your arms around people and say, look, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
We're going to provide this soft cushion, but it's going to be exciting because we're just ticking up the roller coaster ride, and then it's going to be, we're going to have this fast ride. But it is a big opportunity to help people feel safe.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID world has been a bit of a challenge, right? Because I think for a long time, we all believe like, hey, we're all in this together, we're doing this, but we're not really, right? Everybody has been sort of disproportionately affected by COVID. You couple that with an economic downturn globally, you couple that with just massive changes to the energy industry. Calgary is probably more disproportionately affected by COVID and in a post-COVID world more than anybody. But I think that's also our opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. Our opportunity is that, again, we have laid the groundwork over the last 4 years for something in terms of our biggest comeback ever. And now is the time to capitalize on that and not be afraid to be bold and not be afraid to take chances and to say yes to things. Because I think if we can show people that we've taken the calculated risks, we've put the programming together, and it is something that we can invest in ourselves to do, Calgary can be incredibly successful.
That's a pretty good tagline. Best comeback ever.
I think it is.
I like it. You
honestly,
should put it on T-shirts.
I'm going to put it on a T-shirt. I'm going to say it. No, but I really do believe
with the
it.
hat.
Yeah,
with the little white hat.
Yeah, make our comeback great again or something.
Yeah, that's good.
Something like that. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
like
but it's true. Like, our opportunity is right in front of us, and it's up to us as citizens to say yes, that we want to capitalize on that and get our lives back on track. Because the hard part is that, globally, and even let's say North American, every municipality is in the same position we are. You've got a shrinking tax base. You've got services that are going up. You've got a demand for services going up. You have a more need for things like safety presence and police forcings and all of that. These are real challenges that all these municipalities are going to face, and we are going to face those things together. But not everybody has the opportunity that Calgary has. Not everyone has the, I think, ability to expand our tax base, not our tax rate, in front of them like Calgary has.
Yeah, and I think you make an excellent point that, if we do nothing but stand still, you can't stand still in business, probably in politics, because you're just going to backslide.
Yeah.
And like, in some ways, we're behind Edmonton for some of the facilities that they've got. We need to at least play catch up and then surpass them.
I always say standing still is the fastest way to go backwards in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah.
Right? It's standing still is the same as doing nothing and going backwards. And I'm just not interested in that, right? I really do worry about sort of the young people in our city and the next generation and what this place will be for them. And I really go back to the fundamentals of, Calgary is a place of open doors and opportunity. People come here for that entrepreneurial spirit and, just the way of life that Calgary can offer that nobody else can. And so, how do we maintain those things over a longer period of time is really going to be the challenge. We've got lots of things we're going to have to fix for tomorrow, but it's more important to be proactive in fixing these things for 10 years from now.
Yeah, I don't know how you would necessarily tie this thought into the campaign or the overall idea, but it seems like Calgary has been managing on the back of some chaos and chaotic events, like we have, you don't even have to go back very far. We had the flood and then get over the flood and everyone's like, hey, we're such a great city and we're all together in this. And then oil prices collapse and then buildings start to empty out immediately. And then COVID hits and it's just like, holy, when is this ever going to end?
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a tough spot. In some ways, you have to be the biggest cheerleader.
You have to be, absolutely. And I think, for all the folks that have been elected over the last 10 years, you're right, it has not been an easy time. You start your run with a flood and end with a pandemic and everything in between has been, I think, an incredibly difficult time. And you start to think about all those negative things that have happened. It's no wonder that people sort of say, well, what's next?
Yeah.
Because we kind of have gotten there. My job as mayor is to lead the city. My job is to be the biggest cheerleader for our city and get people back on track, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's not going to be about left or right politics. It's going to be about every Calgarian. And as I've said many times, Calgary doesn't recover if every Calgarian doesn't recover. And those are the pieces we've got to be focused on, because we've got to get past this place we've kind of gotten to.
Yeah, where we're just always on the, here comes the next chaos, and then the next chaos.
Yeah.
I thought it was, just if you remember back when, it was after the flood, it was well after the flood, and then that big transformer blew up underground downtown, and it was like, seriously?
Yeah.
We just got the flood done, and now we're being told not to go to work. It's like, God, when is this going to end?
What's next? What's next?
It's like, it was, mess after mess. So it'll be an interesting ride, because there's going to be a lot of that hand-holding, trying to get people to feel good about where they are.
Yeah.
And then, hey, Calgary's going to be great.
Well, it's not just going to be about platitudes. It's got to be about what's the plan to get us there and get people invested and buying into that plan.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter if it's, city council or if that's every Calgarian, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Calgary really has such a huge opportunity for, this success. It's going to be fantastic. Yeah. And we have a great heritage too, really. Like, we need to build on that, and not just
totally. I think
away.
I think you got to think about the world in terms of, it's okay to embrace who we were, right? But it's also okay to be something different, right? We're not just an oil city anymore. We're not just a cowboy city anymore. We can be those things too, and certainly that has been part of our heritage. But we can also be other things, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah. When I moved to Edmonton at that point, I was young. I was 7 or 8. And
that's the
I
place
lived in
with
New
the
Brunswick.
stick runway, that you thought was Red Deer.
Well, we came on a train because they hadn't invented aircraft yet. So we were in New Brunswick, and I told my best friend, Chris, and I said to him, we're moving to Alberta, and that's where they have the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah.
I was the only thing in my 8-year-old brain that, had any bearing in life. It was funny because, it was interesting, and it was Calgary Stampede.
Well, you spoke earlier about, what are those sort of annual events that we have? What are the things that we can be doing? I mean, that is one that's more than 105 years old, 120 years old now.
Amazing
right?
heritage, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about how do we build on that, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just about sort of Stampede in the traditional sense. What does Stampede become going forward? And I think that's something that even the Stampede is trying to acknowledge and think about. How do we move towards the future?
Yeah. So, politics off to the side. What's interesting about you? Like, why are you cool?
Why am I cool?
Well, you're a pilot.
I don't know
That's
if I've
cool.
ever been called cool before. I mean, I've got 3 kids who might argue that I'm not very cool.
Are they?
But 12, 10, and 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Not painful yet. Wait.
Well, I don't know.
Just wait.
There's a 12-year-old going on 25. She's
it
she's
gets
a
worse,
handful.
buddy.
Yeah,
It gets worse.
Yeah, how old are yours?
I have a 21-year-old, 18, and 15.
Okay, so you're right. It gets worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we're going to have to do many sessions like this about dad advice and in terms of that.
Be a group. We call it group.
Yeah. No. It's, I think it's therapy sessions is what they're called with alcohol. So
Yeah.
no, what makes me cool? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I have a pilot's license.
Yeah.
Very, it's just a private pilot's license, so I'm not like some award-winning airliner or anything.
You're not rushing out of here to get to a flight.
I'm not. I'm not. I have produced a few Hollywood features and own a lot of underlying rights to a whole schwack of comic books and different things. So,
Neat.
Yeah, I've got a lot of different projects going on with things like that, and so it's exciting for me. I mean, when we talk about the film industry here propping up, I mean, it's personally exciting for me.
Close to home.
Yeah, and I'm just in a position where I'm fortunate to have helped that move the needle, right? Because I just see how impactful the film industry is. I mean, last year we did about $180 million locally in film. This year we're going to do about 492, and we think in the next 2 years we can build this to be $1 billion a year industry.
Wow.
I mean, that's the goal,
That's exciting.
right? Like, that's exciting for Calgary.
Yeah.
That's impactful, right? And
Yeah.
so that's a good thing. Other than that, I'm just a dad who's born and raised in the ward I now represent, which I'm very fortunate to be a part of. I love to travel, love to do cool things and eat cool food, and
Take the kids out to sports all the time.
no, my kids are like, my oldest is a little bit like, do you remember Friends? Like when Phoebe would run, kind of arms flailing. Yeah, that's kind of what my kids are a little bit like.
I have warned some parents, the budding parents. I said, don't put them in sports.
So if they're any good, that'll be the rest of your life. We'll be chasing them around.
Yeah,
in sports,
like you can be a parent or you can be a chauffeur.
Yeah.
I don't know which one you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When my son was in basketball and when COVID hit, it felt like someone had amputated a part of my existence. Basketball just ended for me. Like I was just a spectator at that point. But it was like 3 days a week we were watching something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a dramatic change. So
Yeah. How was COVID for your family?
we were pretty at home. Like it was funny. My son and we were driving somewhere, and he's at MRU, and we drove past MRU, and he goes, "Dad, that's where I go to university." Well, I've actually never been there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a lot of doing school at home, and lots of walks, lots of hiking, lots of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but we were lucky. We had access to some gym equipment in the basement, which was good, and
Yeah.
so it wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't terrible.
You make the best of it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think that's the nice thing about COVID is that you get a lot closer to the family around you.
Yeah.
And, when it's done, you hopefully take away the lessons learned and the values that
Yeah.
you created because of it.
Yeah.
I watched a little too much Tiger King for my own liking, but,
Yeah.
that's...
Yeah, some people said that they finished Netflix, which is impressive.
Yeah, I think my kids may have done that. Like the hard part was, about 6.5 months into it, and they're like, "There's no new movies to watch," and you're like,
Yeah, I would have thought my house would have been cleaner.
"Yeah, no." Like what I liked is not having to have people come over because you never had to clean up and
Yeah,
sort of
that's
be like, "Hey, we've got company coming." But on the downside was that a month and a half in, you're like, "We should probably clean up."
Yeah, I would have thought I would have got a lot more done. 2 years in, and there's still a lot of projects that haven't hit yet.
Yeah, like there was a lot of things I could have done, but I mean, well, in all honesty, I feel like being elected and in COVID, it was almost busier than it ever has been before
Yeah,
for us
that's right.
because you're just trying to maintain the city operations and maintain running and just everything going on in and around with folks' concerns all around you. But
Right.
it would have been nice to maybe retile a bathroom here and there. But,
Yeah. Council's over now for the summer. Is it?
There's one
is
more.
there one more meeting?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
one more meeting in September and a few committee meetings,
Oh,
and
okay.
then it's we're done for this term.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and then the election is October
October 18th.
18th.
Yeah.
So we're how many weeks away?
I don't know. It feels like a lifetime.
Not enough?
Yeah,
Or
it
too
feels
many?
like a lifetime.
One of the two.
I don't know. It'll be interesting because with the federal election
Yeah.
we think about to be called next week, it'll be interesting to see how that has an impact on the municipal election.
This is probably a little offside, but I was saying to someone, it's like, they were saying, is Justin actually seriously going to call an election right now? Like, I said, yeah, just think of how much money he's given away over the last couple of years. It's kind of like buying your girlfriend roses and chocolates and then saying, do you love me now? Yeah. Well, of course I love you now.
Yeah.
But why don't you wait 6 months and see what happens?
Yeah, the challenge in places like Alberta is that we just continue to announce the same money, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's I'm very grateful for the Green Line funding we've received, but we've announced this money like 4 times.
Yeah.
Can we have some more money, please?
Yeah. Now let's spend it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it to good use. So.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I know you're a busy guy. It's super fun to have you on the show, and hopefully everything goes well over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And so maybe we can have you back on either way.
I would love to be back
Yeah,
on.
it'd be
This is
fun.
great.
Maybe you'll be the mayor. You'll be the. I can't get
Knock on wood.
Nenshi to sit right there. We got to get him in.
Okay,
Come
well,
visit
I
us.
will make a commitment to you if I'm the mayor. I will be back here sitting and we will chat
Awesome.
again.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Much appreciated. Thanks
Hopefully
very
I'll
much.
see you again soon, and the best of luck. So
You bet.
Have a great day.
Thanks.